All right, it's Monday, July 31st. This is an end of the day SPY recap. And today, to end the day and to end the month, we end up with a bit of a two-up green bar, kind of a minor bar after Friday's inside bar, after this big red bar, and then a gap up and just a little inside consolidation turning green. We kind of expected things to test higher, but we really didn't get much momentum to the upside today. And there was a bit of conflict in the sense that we opened up kind of lower right from the start, which I'll show you in a second, but never really got below the midpoint of this bar. So in terms of the actual index, it was a little tricky for opportunities today. And I'll get to that in a second. But if we now look at the weekly chart, this is green from last week. We talk about our bigger picture targets up there. We talked about we had a big red bar that failed on the downside. So we still have broadening action that projects up to the, our bigger picture targets. And you can see here starting the week now, we kind of have a little push down, but that could be, if this open holds here, then that could be one of those looks. Let's say you get a big green bar to the upside. That often what these things look like, where you kind of have a little tail at some point, but then you get a big green bar. So that's always possible, but we're also at a point here on the daily chart where if we start up a little bit tomorrow because of this green bar and we come through the midpoint, we could and never reach our target, which is at least the next, the top of this big red bar, we could be failing. And, if we fail, we get below the open of the week and below the midpoint of the prior day and everything else. So we have kind of a good reference point for Tuesday to see really what unfolds. But in terms of today, if we look at it closely, the pre-market range was between the blue lines here, and price immediately kind of started up. Well, that's a 5-minute chart because I want to get to that in a second. So price immediately started up and then kind of paused here right near those highs and then immediately kind of had a big red bar. And if you look at the red bar, it was a big red bar that came all the way down and took out kind of the pre-market low. So all of a sudden within the first half hour, you're taking out the entire range and you kind of have a bit of a negative bias in play in terms of structure that's unfolding, yet you're holding above the midpoint of yesterday, right in here. So, look, if you're trying to have the long bias and you want to do a red to green, this is an inside move. You can get long here, but you're kind of, once you do red to green on this kind of environment, after taking out some stops, you're really expecting immediate follow through right through the intraday highs and then further. And then you kind of got a little momentum there, on bar 4. Then you kind of pause for 2 bars. This would be the key to me. After those 2 bars of pausing, you're starting up. At that point, you're already a little suspect because it should have went much quicker than that to those highs. But it took 45 minutes, and then it starts up, and then it immediately begins to fail. So when I saw this bar forming, to me, it would have been a sign, if you were going to go long on the index here, thinking red to green, get out and just watch, and that's it. This is getting tricky. Once I saw this red bar form, quite frankly, I saw it as kind of a big red bar getting up, back to kind of the midpoint of that bar, and then getting big red again to the downside. So at this point on this bar, you kind of suspected you were going to take out that intraday low, which happened. And you can see there, it had a bias to the downside. You took out the low, you kind of chopped around, you took it out one more time, and then boom, right at the last second, it closes strongly green, as if to say today was just a nothing day, but we still have an up bias overall. And, now we end the month here green, so you're expecting into August some kind of follow through above those highs, and it would be logical to continue that tomorrow and into next week, just given this green bar. So we'll see what happens. Again, we have the reference point of a failure. We'll see if we get, we have this target now. We have the yellow line big picture target I've been talking about on the monthly chart. We'll see if it gets there. I guess I'll point out, because I was kind of away today, but I also was interested in trading Netflix right here. And, obviously it had a nice day, one push up, pause, kind of a second push up type of day, classic directional day that I always talk about. Let me type Netflix in here instead of the SPY and just show you why I think it was a good type. This is a classic example. Type it in of when I play aggressively from the open. First of all, coming in, you had the analysis from the week that you had this big shooter bar counted by a hammer bar here. So you were looking for it to kind of now work higher. You had the green, flat top green bar, which should have signaled higher, and you had like a triple flat top here, breakout kind of thing. So when you see that, kind of environment, here's the flat top, and then you see the first 5-minute bar. That's what I want to point out here. really come out of the gates really strong, the very first bar. At that point, you can kind of anticipate the 15-minute bar turning green and continuing higher, that type of thing. That's how those are the type of 5-minute opens I get really aggressive on. When we're breaking up above that high, it's a very strong, you can pick, it was one of the strongest stocks right out of the gates. If you're kind of, following all these different stocks at the same time, you can see that you were watching and you saw that Netflix was the one that really opened up stronger than anything else. But anyway, so you get long here, and then obviously you shift to the 15-minute chart at that point, and you expect follow-through. You got your follow-through to kind of set up the buy. It kind of just paused, held the midpoint of that bar, and made its 2 pushes up. So this was, not every stock had a strong up, on a day where the SPY was kind of just moving, just kind of actually had a little bit of a down bias and was just chopping around until the very end. There were, you just look around, most stocks were not doing all that much, but stocks like Netflix was a good example of something that kind of bucked the trend, so to speak. So, and that was a good trade. So anyway, we will see what happens tomorrow with the SPY. After this close, you're kind of anticipating higher now, and we have the midpoint of today and the open of the week right here to kind of judge. As long as that kind of holds, we're expecting higher, and we'll, continue to expect that until something fails to the downside. And on the weekly chart, that's always the big picture. Let me get to that. We're always waiting for this weekly bar to fail to really have any kind of a shift in trend. And we're going to have to get below the midpoint of the prior week. So we'll see what unfolds here for the rest of the week with a bias to the upside.